We're live from Lagos, Nigeria's financial capital. On today, the Statistics Office released the first quarter GDP showing a contraction of a negative 0.52%. And we have the Statistician General, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Bureau of Statistics, Dr. Yemi Kale from our Abuja studios. Good morning, sir. It's good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it here. Talk us through these numbers, what the highlights of this report is all about.
Well, as you are aware, 2016 was a difficult year for the Nigerian economy, and in the first quarter, as you have released, as you have announced, the GDP was still in negative territory, still a contraction. But what we are seeing is that the contraction seems to have been reducing quarter on quarter since the third quarter. So it suggests that things are generally improving. In particular, we had about 15 economic activities that were negative in the previous quarter that turned positive. So it basically suggests that things are generally improving.
Well, the numbers show, of course, a negative 1.73% in fourth quarter, but, also a negative 0.5% in Q1. In nominal terms and real GDP terms, talk to us about the Naira and Kobo of this report.
Well, in real GDP takes out the impact of inflation from the numbers. So we like to focus on real GDP because that's the real impact on the economy. The economy is driven by seven activities drive the economy. You have agriculture that retained its positive growth. You had trade that was worse than the previous quarter, but I guess that's not surprising for anybody that has been paying attention to the inflation numbers. Trade is likely related to inflation. Then you have your crude petroleum production, which improved but still negative. Then you have manufacturing that turned positive after about 4 quarters of negative growth. Real estate is still negative, but not as negative as the previous quarter. And telecommunications that continue to be positive. Now, these are the sectors that drive 70% of gross domestic product. So usually whatever happens to these sectors tends to determine the trend in terms of where GDP would go.
Let's backtrack a little bit backwards to first quarter 2015, not 2016, 2015, and it was 3.96%, a solid 3.96% in the first quarter of 2015, despite all the hula baloo around the general elections. And for the entire 2015, we were positive, even though we finished off the year at 2.11%. So if you're looking at a Q1, historically speaking, does it look like a period when you expect economic activity to boom, looking at the end of year effect of consumer spending, the manufacturing activities, sales, and what have you?
I don't think what the numbers show is that there's a boom or that we're out of the woods. I think what the numbers show, like I mentioned earlier, is that we are getting out of it. Things are improving. That's not to say that things have improved. They're two different things. When you compare it to 2015, I want to go back a year and compare it with 2014. Now, if you look at the numbers, anybody that was following the numbers, you would find that the economy had been slowing down. There was a slowdown in the economy from the second quarter of 2014, and that actually continued right up to when it entered negative territory. So if it took several quarters, about 8 quarters, to enter negative territory, before we get to the point where we are saying boom, or to compare it with periods of high growth in 2014 and even in 2015, I think it's going to take some time. What matters at this point is that things appear to be moving in the right direction. I have to say as well that the improvement is still very fragile. The economy is still directly and indirectly dependent on the oil and gas sector for about 60% of GDP. So if there's any disruptions in oil prices or oil production significantly, that might reverse these gains. But holding everything constant, it looks like things are improving. Again, improving is not necessarily saying we've gotten out of trouble. We still have a lot of challenges, but what I'm saying is that the numbers from Q3 seem to be improving every quarter. and that's a positive sign. But there's still a lot of work left to do.
I'm sure by now you're having some feeders of what the second quarter looks like. But let's stick with the Q1 a little bit. The positive reading that we got from the non-oil sector, about 0.72%, despite everything else, does that look to you that that's where we have a soft landing as far as the overall Q1 GDP came from?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. Non-oil returning to positive territory was a good thing, although it's a very small positive. But at the same time, the oil sector's improvement still negative. I mean, in the second quarter, I think it was as bad as minus 23%. So that performance has improved by about half. So if the oil sector had not improved, if the relative peace in the Niger Delta had not been in place, regardless of the positive growth in the non-oil sector, the economy would have worsened. So I think there's a combination of improvements in the non-oil sector as well as improvements in the oil sector. Again, I have to remind you that the non-oil sector itself is still largely dependent on improvements in the oil sector. So that link between improvements in the oil sector as well as improvements in the non-oil sector still stands and is extremely crucial. That's the structure of the economy that we run, unfortunately.
A very quick one. What would you like to see? You said the economy is still, well, a little bit testy, if you want to put it, soft. So what would you like to see moving forward?
Well, I would like the trend to continue. I don't believe any serious Nigerian, any patriotic Nigerian, regardless of political affiliations, regardless of ethnic or religious choices, would want the economy to suffer, because when the economy suffers, we all suffer. So as a Nigerian, particularly one that looks at this data on a regular basis, I want the numbers to improve.